I was feeling rather Mickey Mouse-like today, so I wanted to bring that with me, and after experiencing the Grotesque Burlesque the other evening, I feel like we got a bit of a taste of the zeitgeist, the spirit of what Berlin was in the late 20s, and that was what I really wanted to accomplish, was to not go back in time, but to draw the parallels between art and censorship in the face of fear, in the face of war that exists in America, and show that all the great art and expressionism that took place here is very essential to how we behave and create now. So it was an honor to be able to come to Berlin as an American and do something as an outsider and feel welcome as a part of the artistic community. Well, I could see it being strange, for example, if a German artist came to Hollywood and tried to recreate an era that they weren't a part of. But I think I have a genuine understanding of the people's intentions, because people throughout history don't really change. They always have the same feelings inside them. And it's basically rooted in imagination. And imagination is something that seems to be encouraged. Individuality seems to be encouraged in America. At the same time, it's much more about control. And in the 1930s in Hollywood, few people know that all of the movie theaters were owned by very rich men that also owned clothing stores. So we were being sold fashion as a commodity for the first time, and it was a means of controlling people's fear of wanting to fit in and wanting to be accepted. And one side of it is really great, that people were walking around LA dressing glamorously and acting like they were living in a film, silent film sometimes, or maybe just the birth of some of the better films that had started coming out there. At the same time, in the Weimar, previous to that, we were, lucky enough to get some great art out of a dangerous political upheaval, and noir film was created, and the idea of not only making movies about normal stories that are very easily accessible to the entire mass population. People were taking things out of their imagination. They were challenging symbols of power, and that's what I've done, and that's what my collaboration with Gottfried Helnwein is based on, taking symbols of America, taking symbols of Europe, and showing people that whether it's religion, that a Bible is more than just pieces of paper. So, for example, if you were to tear up a Bible, it doesn't destroy what it's about. So it's often important to challenge people's beliefs, to let them know that if one person can come in and destroy everything that you represent, then you really should examine what you represent, because it might have some flaws in it. So it's not just about nihilism and anarchy, it's about sometimes this, I don't know the German word for it, but it's putting extremes against each other. And there you can find the real answers, because art is a question that is posed to everyone who views it. And it's generally impossible for an artist to give an answer, because that's sometimes the opposite of what art is meant to be. You can find the answer in art, but not from the artist. I'd initially wanted to play it even before we selected that theater, because it seemed like a song that Berlin, even now, could still embrace, something that was a folk song, or folks is the German word, right? So I've always been a fan of the song. The Doors covered it, David Bowie covered it. I think it's a kind of a tradition in rock that I should do something of my own to it. And it was very liberating and transforming for me to do something that was out of context of what my record is and what I normally do in a live performance, to play with a piano accompaniment. So it was very surreal, and I like creating things that don't fit within the context of normal reality. The Golden Age of Grotesque was meant to be a statement or a manifesto or declaration that this will be a new era of expression for me, that I have conquered a battle in my career and in my personal life and in my art with the last 3 albums, and this was a fresh start, a way of surviving and evolving in a time when man has reached the end of history, and may seem that there's nothing left to create. But for me, I found that to be a modernist now, you have to be prehistoric, and you can take the simplest things and learn from them. The genius of art existing in the mind of children, because children cannot read the rules that are given for them. So they do things in a way that is honest, not necessarily innocent, but it's just open. They don't censor themselves. They don't think about the repercussions of their statements or their creations. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to behave and create like I'm 10, because Marilyn Manson is 10, and rather than feeling frustrated that I've done too much and I could be jaded because, I've reached my early 30s. So it was a matter of thinking differently. I had to throw away my own rules that I had created for myself. And the theater of grotesque and the idea of pulling things from your imagination that look at the world askew, obtusely, taking any scene and making it obscene, this became part of my creative process. And the Golden Age of Grotesque initially was meant to be a very positive outlook at this being an era of expression and imagination. But because the world around us looks so ugly, the word grotesque can also take its modern meaning, which is something more derogatory. So it's quite an interesting contrast and juxtaposition that's happened now, because normally you create art to change your surroundings, but now the surroundings of what I've done have started to change the context, so that for me makes it really even more powerful. The song Vaudeville, even the title, actually came from a photograph I saw of someone who had misspelled the word vaudeville. And it was interesting that the word evil existed in it, and that people often consider what I do to be evil. But I think that I have a different definition of what's good and evil. I have a different definition of anything that people hold up as true. And I'm always changing that. I'm an abstract idea that cannot be condensed into one definition. Satire and parody, in the way that I implement it, is what infuriates America and confuses people in a way that it inspires a lot of conversation and provokes them, because I don't always make it clear what my intentions are, because that takes a lot of the meaning out of art. I make things that challenge the idea that how could putting on something comical like a children's hat like this all of a sudden become something that threatens the integrity of American culture. It's amusing to me. So this record contains a larger spectrum of my personality than I have in the past. And instead of talking about how I feel, I think I just put people inside my head with the way I painted pictures with words on this album. I wanted them to feel like I feel rather than hearing like I feel. So with rhythm and cadence and tone, I, in some ways, created the opposite of a silent film in music. Almost a musical, but not in the traditional sense when someone sits down to write a musical. but I think it takes you on a similar journey. It tells you a tale. Everybody is going to hear a different one because the tale it tells you is usually your own. I want people to see themselves in me. And that's what infuriates people, because they see themselves and sometimes they're ashamed of things. At vaudeville and cabaret and burlesque, you know, each culture, whether it be the French or the Germans or the Americans, which is strange because Germany and France and America aren't very friendly with one another right now. So it's good for me as an artist to try and unite the people through something entertaining and pointing out that art and entertainment can exist in the same person if done the way that I'm doing it. But those three mediums and events like the Grotesque burlesque, I believe that those were some of the best escapes for people. If you can't control the world outside, I can create a world for people in a record or in an event that they can feel free. They can feel truly free and not owned by anybody or not controlled by anything but their own whims and their own desires. The record begins with me being faced with the idea of everything's been said, so what do I do? And I answer my own question with the song, This Is the New Shit. And it seems very degenerative in its deconstruction of ideas by almost making fun of itself as it goes along. And I end that song with Let Us Entertain You, which is a very American anecdotal phrase. And I end the album in a similar way by saying I'm not ashamed that I entertained you, but it's more than that. This is my life. Sex plays an important role and contrast in everything that comes across on this record, because I talk about relationships that I've overcome in the past and how they've helped form my personality. And it's by having a relationship now that I feel very inspired by, that I can have that distance to look back at things that I've done in the past. I was attracted to her because she has an interest in a lot of the same aesthetics as me, and she also takes her performance and what she does with the same level of dedication and also with the same ability to have a sense of humor about what you do. And you can be completely serious and dedicated to your art without taking everything seriously. So I think maybe her positive influence was making me feel like I should put forth more of my personality. But that doesn't mean stripping away anything. It just means showing people more than I've shown them in the past. It was just a challenge to me to make people feel more than anything that the time they spent at a show or the time they spend listening to a record is more like time they've spent with me alone, getting to know me.